Thank you for this opportunity to be with you today. I am deeply honored because as I look at what North Dakota is doing, I am deeply impressed with the leadership that is coming out of your state through the Innovation Academy and all the schools that are using that Innovation Academy, together with the Governor's Innovation Education Task Force. I've had the privilege this past year to chair a national commission for the American Association of School Superintendents. The commission was entitled Learning 2025, National Commission on Student-Centered Equity-Focused Education. And it brought together 27 of our nation's leaders, 12 of the most well-known respected school superintendents in the country, together with several corporate heads of various foundations. And they came together and met over a 6-month period every 2 weeks to deeply look at where should we head in terms of American education by the year 2025 to make sure that all, and he underscored the word all, children are well prepared for a technological information-based society in which they will live, work, and interact. As we did that, the commission began its work by looking at kind of 6 major areas. The first one was the realization that today's students are different. They're different than our 20th century schools were designed to prepare for. And it's not just that they're an extension of this technology. Their social beliefs, how they interact, how they communicate are fundamentally different, and their expectations are different than those of the 20th century students. When we looked at that, in each of these 6 areas, I could literally spend an hour or more on. But as we looked at that area, we said, wow, our schools need to factor this in. And then they said, you know what else we need to do? And it's so close to the Governor's Innovation Education Task Force recommendation on aligning assessment systems. We said, we've got to relook at student achievement. And then as we relook at it, maybe pivot and make our graduation requirements more flexible, just as the Governor's Task Force recommended, and just as your innovation academies are doing. And let me give you a research group we worked with, a McKinsey and Company, a great research group used in the private sector a lot. And what they did was a major study that they released in February about the percentage of time workers presently and projected over the next 3 years will spend in each of the 5 quintiles of the American workplace. And so if you look at this chart and you see a black line with 50 on it, that is the lowest wage quintile. If you go to the right-hand side and you see the one with 4%, that is the highest wage quintile. And what those black figures indicate are the percentage of the working hours that workers will use physical and manual skills. So not surprising, those in the lowest quintile will spend a whole lot of their time using physical and manual skills. Those in the upper, not so much. Then they looked at basic cognitive skills, which have been front and center ever since the Nation at Risk, and we know are essential. But what this study showed is they're essential, but they're not adequate. Because if you look especially at the upper quintiles, the percentage of time in physical and manual skills or basic cognitive skills is a relatively low percentage of their time. Then you look at higher cognitive skills. But then look at SEL, social and emotional skills. Now, why is that? Why is there such an increase in social and emotional skills? At the exact same time, many of our students are coming to us with greater and greater challenges in these areas. The need for those skills are exponentially more important, especially in the upper quintiles. And the reason is this, is technology is fundamentally changing, not simply the technology the kids use, not simply the technology in our personal lives, it's changing the American workplace in fundamental and dramatic ways. See, if you can write an algorithm for a task, the job is gone. and you can't write an algorithm for SEL. And then technological skills. And that doesn't mean the ability to manipulate the latest piece of technology. It's the academics that underpin those skills, like data analytics. Now, is data analytics math, or is it language arts, or some combination thereof? And therefore, we need to take a deeper step back and really look at how to restructure graduation requirements and how to support this group of students and align the system from both an instructional and an assessment point of view, just as the task force recommended, just as the academies are attempting to do in your state. Workers increasingly are going to need technological, analytical, and soft skills. And the question is that what our schools are focused on? Added to that is just, as I mentioned a moment ago, this increasing challenge our kids are coming to us with SEL-related skills, and I would even move it to mental health-related skills. We looked deeply at that and said, you know, what they're coming to us with is moving in the opposite direction than what they actually might need in terms of success in the world beyond school. So our biggest skill gap may not be basic cognitive skills. No, let me repeat for a second time. Basic cognitive skills, essential, but it's not adequate. Our biggest skill gap is more on the higher cognitive skills, the social and emotional skills, and the technological skills. And it's clear, and if any of you have ever heard me speak before, you know this is what I spend most of my time on, which is talking about how advancing technologies will change the workplace, home, society, and should change education. We looked deeply at those issues. And another time, I would be glad to spend an hour a day with you deeply looking at the new and emerging technologies. But simply to say, they're changing the world. And so if our kids are different and the workplace they're going to go into is different, don't schools need to do something different? And we concluded they did. But we also concluded this. The American classroom teacher, the American principal, the American school superintendent has increasingly become overwhelmed. And when we talk about stress, it's not just with the students, it's with the adults that serve these students. And we recognize that what we can't do is what we've done for decades, which is just keep adding more and more and more to the plate without taking anything away. So we concluded that one of your real big tasks, and I suggest to you for the Innovation Academy, it's a big task. You got to figure out what to take off the plate. And then bring greater focus and using technologies and different processes, systems. We got to bring focus to the most essential skills. And to do that, the commission concluded you got to create system-wide transformation. But you can't do that on a dime. You can't do it overnight. It's going to take 2, 3, 4 years, and that's why we said 2025. And so the commission then said, let's have a clear vision of what we think schools should, in the ideal world, look like in the year 2025. And let me be clear, I'm going to give you 11 major recommendations. No school in America can do all 11. If you try to do all of them, you're going to be a revolutionist, and revolutionists get killed. It's got to be evolutionary. And you got to pick and choose based upon your own community, your own dynamic, which of these are ones that you can begin to push forward. And so the first recommendation was this: recognizing our kids are different, that technology provides new opportunities for us. The commission has recommended that they need to become co-authors of their own learning journey, rather than someone that simply has a bunch of courses, that are predetermined what they'll take, when they'll take them, and how quickly they will get through them. That the students need to receive the opportunity to build their instructional program and determine how to apply it that best meets their needs. Technology enables you to do that. What we're identifying are a series of demonstration districts across America that are the best in America at doing this. We think some of those may be in North Dakota. We think out of your Innovation Academy and other initiatives you have in your state, there's some districts that may want to become part of this. We're going to put about 100 districts in the nation together to do. But if you're going to ask students to be the co-author of their learning journey, if they're going to have the ability to not simply receive instruction, but rather to build it and then apply it using advancing technologies, it changes the role of the classroom teacher. They have to begin to re-engineer that learning journey for the students. And it shifts it away from a random set of disconnected courses into a coordinated experience for the student. You know, think across your state, whether a tiny district or a bigger district. Does the teacher third period in a middle school or high school have any idea what the kids took first period, what was actually taught today to them, or what will happen in the period of following the course they're teaching? Are they simply a series of disconnected, random set of experiences for kids? It doesn't need to be that way anymore. Ultimately, and it's why we put the year 2025 in front of everyone, is we're going to need to redesign the system, and it has HR implications, it has physical plant implications, it has huge implications for how you use technology. And we believe that these demonstration districts, again, will light the path, as I think your innovation academies have begun to do in your own state and for many districts outside of your state as well. So they are the three central major recommendations, all starting with co-authoring the learning journey by the student. To help them do that, we're making some recommendations. And again, remember, no district can do all this. They'll pick and choose. But many of you in North Dakota have worked with Portrait of a Graduate. Karen Garza, who heads up Patel for Kids, and who's the creator of the Portrait of a Graduate, Karen served on the commission. And what we've concluded is we need a tweaking of the Portrait of a Graduate to the Portrait of a Learner. If the learner, the student, is the co-author of their learning journey, what do they do differently than students historically have done? We think by writing the portrait, it gives you a visual of what you want that student experience to be like. And then if the student experience is different, and then what's the role of the educator? What's the portrait of the educator? What's the educator do differently? What's the leader do differently? Overall, what does the school district do differently? Or the districts we will work with will provide them support and help in trying to write any of these if they choose to. And again, for the third time, I say, you're not going to do it all. You're going to pick and choose that which makes most sense for your district. Well, the portraits will help describe this. We have made a commitment that the districts we're going to work with need to do three things. They need to be committed to three basic concepts. The first one is they got to be committed to a culture that is focused, yes, first and foremost on academics, but we'll focus on the whole learner. Recognizing that issues in and around SEL, by way of example, are something that we need to figure out how to really address in our schools. Second major belief we ask the districts to have is the belief that no learner, no student can be marginalized because of their gender, because of their race, their religion, because of their social economic status, because of their disability, that we will love, nurture, support every child in the system. And finally, and by the way, those first two we're finding districts all across the country say yes to. Third one might be a little difficult, but we think again in North Dakota, you've embraced this deeper than other states, which is you got to be future leaning. That's why the year 2025. Put that stake in the ground. See, what most districts do, what most school boards do, what most superintendents do is when they're building their school budget, they always begin with what's in place from the past. And we maintain that. Now, can we add anything? If I'm a classroom teacher, I begin with last year's lessons. We keep building from the past. We are forward focused from the past. And that keeps us locked into the old paradigm. To really shift, we believe you got to put the stake in the ground in the year 2025 and build back. Still embracing that which works, that which is good, that embracing your community's values, but you need to be more future leaning. Prepare kids for their future, not our past. As you do that from an instructional point of view, we do believe that SEL is important. If you look at this continuum, and this is from the medical community, they use the word behavioral health continuum. And on the left-hand side, you see the word developmental, and then prevention, and then intervention and treatment. The reality of it is most school districts increasingly have had to spend their time and resources on the right-hand side on intervention and treatment. What we find in the nation's most rapidly improving schools is that unless they address the SEL skills, academic skills, will never be able to achieve what we hope they will. And so they spend more time, the district, on the developmental side of SEL and on the prevention skills. The second thing we believe is, if you remember the research from the McKinsey and Company that I shared a few minutes ago, that basic cognitive skills are really important, but higher cognitive skills also important. If you look at this list, 5 levels of learning, level 1 is I have knowledge. 2, I can apply my knowledge in my discipline. 3, I can apply knowledge across disciplines. 4 is I can apply knowledge to real world predictable situations. 5, ability to apply my knowledge to a real world unpredictable situation. Here's the reality. Most of our state and national testing programs in this country measure number 1 on this chart, which is, I say for the third time, essential, but it's not adequate. In the technological information-based society, our students are going to live, work, and interact, but we got to give them to level 5. That's a different set of skills. That's the need to think about how you do more integration, to provide more flexibility in how we look at things like our graduation requirements. The final thing we concluded was we needed to go to a growth model. In a growth model, more than a proficiency model. A proficiency model as driven by a single test at a point in time. All kids do not get to the same level academically at the exact same time on the exact same day. That is our proficiency model. A growth model, and if you think about things like the Lexile framework and the quantile framework, there are a number of different ways to build so that you have a growth model for each student. Now, that means holistic student support, just as your governor's task force called for. It probably requires a different way of even looking at some of your funding. But what the commission concluded is it needs to be a continuous loop on all these areas. What we'll be doing for schools that we will work with is help them do first an assessment audit, if they choose. Again, don't have to do it all. Pick and choose the recommendations you want. But an assessment audit of these 5 areas. Are you truly assessing all 5 of these areas? Or are you over-assessing only 1 or 2 of them? And based upon that, we'll look at both what is happening in education, not only in the US, but internationally. Look at what's happening in the private sector on ways to assess some of the technological skills and the social and emotional skills and higher cognitive skills. And based upon that, we'll work with any district that chooses to have us do that to help build a dashboard that will monitor the progress of every student, individually, collectively for the school, on all of those skill areas. There'll be the need for the use of new and different resources. We call it Learning Accelerator. Advancements in technology can be used to really help us personalize instruction and bring more focus to our instructional program. We're providing support to the schools on that. We'll talk to them and deal with them how to use community resources more effectively. We'll talk about the importance of early learning. For our children in poverty, so many of them are coming to us developmentally delayed as 5-year-olds. So we're pushing to try to find ways to support more early learning and to provide a more diverse educational pipeline in many of our more urban states. What we're finding is the student population doesn't look at all like the teaching and administrative population. We just want to make sure that there is a pipeline of educators that are representative of the communities in which they serve. To do all these things, we do have a national commission. This is where you can go to get to, we call it apply, but it's really not apply. It's to give us some basic information. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes to fill out. For us to then have a follow-up in-depth telephone conversation with the leadership team of the district about how you might become involved in the national network. We encourage you to think about doing that. Also, I'm going to give you my email here if anybody has follow-up questions today, or if you want a copy of my PowerPoint, whatever. If you email me, I'll be glad to send it to you. It's bill@bdaggett.com. I'll put this back up at the end of my presentation. But let me show you those districts that we're dealing with, the services that will be available to them if they choose to use it. We'll begin with an interview where we'll ask the districts to identify for us what they think their priorities are and what they think the greatest challenges are in achieving those priorities. Based upon that, we will be appointing a senior consultant to serve as a resource person for that school district, for the superintendent, for the leadership team. And that senior consultant will initially be available for up to 16 hours online to meet with whomever the superintendent identifies as most important for them to meet with, to learn as much as we possibly can about what you have in place, and then to begin to talk about, okay, based upon your own priorities and your own challenges, the senior consultant will begin to make some recommendations to the district. That initial interview is going to give us enough information so that we pick a senior consultant who has experience in your size district, in your type of social economic makeup of your community. And we will be tying the senior consultants across the country into a national network. What that senior consultant will then have for you is they'll provide a concierge service. You got a question, you email or you call. They'll get back to you same day with an answer to whatever it is you're looking for. But I want to be clear, it doesn't mean the senior consultant's going to have the answer to every question you ask, but what they're going to have is a deep reservoir of resources to reach out to. First, beginning with through the Successful Practices Network, which is an organization I head up. We will reach out to leading educational partners across the country. So for example, if you got an SEL issue, we'll reach out to people like Linda Dollingham and Pam Cantor, others who have deep background and experiences in this area to try to get the answer to the question that you raised through the concierge service. In addition, we'll have the best practices from over 100 school districts in America, and we'll share them on an ongoing basis. And the senior consultants will understand where those best practices are, and we'll try to network you so that you can talk to similar districts trying to do similar things who have addressed the very challenges or questions you're raising. And then they also, if you need available additional consultant services, they'll be able to recommend who they think would be appropriate for you to use. If you choose, we'll begin the process by doing that assessment audit that I described earlier around the skills that I laid out. Based upon that, if you choose, we'll help you create a district dashboard to be able to track using those assessments, track student progress in each of the areas. And then we'll have a whole series of professional learning opportunities for the districts that we are working with. The first one is AASA, again, that's American Association of School Superintendents. They have over 20, what they call cohorts of superintendents, and they have anywhere from 30 to 70 superintendents in each cohort, and each cohort is around a specific issue. So for example, if it's SEL again, they have a cohort. If it's early learning and you want some solutions of how to do in a small rural community, we got superintendents doing that across the country. They're part of this cohort. Based upon what your priority is, we will have your district become part of any one of these cohorts that most connect up to your district priorities. Again, we'll have all the resources from the network that we'll be sharing on an ongoing basis. We'll be doing monthly videos of the cutting edge practices, which will be archived so that you can use however you choose to use with your teachers, your community, your staff. We'll have ongoing blogs and newsletters. We'll have 2 semi-annual meetings that you'll be invited to. One will be the preceding the National AASA National Conference in February. We'll have a conference for all the network schools. They'll come together to share their best practices. The other one will be in the summer. I'll describe that in a moment. We will be writing detailed case studies around each of the districts and then sharing their research-based best practices. We'll be doing study tours, a number of study tours. And so when you see a study tour that is to a district that seems to be socioeconomically like yours, having some of the same priorities as yours, and seems to be on the cutting edge nationally, you'll be able to send a team to study tours to whatever of these districts you choose to. Again, through the senior consultant, we'll provide ongoing technical assistance. And the final thing is, once a month, we'll be bringing together one of the nation's absolutely most respected leaders who will be doing symposiums. They will also be archived so that you can share those different topic every month with a leader in your district, as well as your teachers, your community, your board. There will be 2 national conferences where the best practices are shared. I already mentioned one of them, which will be just before the National AASA National Conference. But in addition, if any of the superintendents have ever participated in the National Education Conference by AASA, about 4,000 superintendents attend each year, their entire conference in 2022 is going to be devoted to the best practices from these school districts. In addition, in the summer of 2022, we'll be in late June, we're going to do a national conference where we're inviting districts to bring boardroom to classroom, bring them together into a national conference, share with each other. We'll put them, put the rural districts together, the urban districts together, the suburban districts together. We'll have topics around each of the major areas of the recommendations. And they'll talk about, here are the research-based best practices, and here are what we call the next practices, the promising practices that we think will connect that have not had enough time to yet be research validated. The final thing is we'll then provide national recognition to individual schools, to states that are on the cutting edge. So that's the Learning 2025 National Commission and its recommendations, and most importantly, the demonstration districts. If you'd like to consider being one, here is where you can go, a link you can go to fill out an initial application. It'll take you, again, 15 to 20 minutes, where you will share some basic information which will help us determine who we should have in your first in-depth interview with members from AASA, from myself, my staff, and from a senior consultant who will then pick up the ball to lead that concierge service and coordinate all the services in your district. I close, and I'll leave up my email if you have any questions, want a copy of the PowerPoint, just send me an email, we'll get back to you. But let me close by really where I began, commending you. North Dakota, you are truly on the cutting edge. Your Innovation Academy, as good as we find in the country. The governor's Innovation Education Task Force recommendations, strikingly similar to the National Commission. What the National Commission did have the ability to do, however, is then pivot to a national network of demonstration districts that will have validated best practices, which we hope we can share. And we hope we can, in North Dakota, and we hope we can share your best practices with other states. With that, thank you again for this opportunity. Have a great rest of your summer. Thanks and good day.